Hello there. Hopefully, I can teach you a little something something about kind of working with right hand technique because that's basically what's going on in this sort of idea. The idea that we want to kind of correlate is really the left hand is completely resolute. It's stationary. It's just kind of doing its own thing. We're not emphasizing the left hand. We can play, right? Let's say we know how to play chords, but we want to spice them up and do something different. And a lot of that comes from what you are playing. I was going to say praying, but what you are playing rhythmically. The rhythm is super important and vital to a song in any way. And the best way I I personally kind of size up a guitarist is the way they play acoustic guitar, because the way they play acoustic guitar tells me a lot about the way they think when I put an electric guitar in their hands, or I ask them, what play a lead, or follow along with this or do that. It tells me a lot about a person. Most guitar players, the majority, not everyone, but they will do the most basic thing, which is attacking all of the strings at once. So it sounds like this. And the problem with that is that there's no room for dynamics. You're hitting everything all at once. The timbre of each individual string is kind of attacking your ears all at once. And what that kind of does, and there's certain moments where you really need to drive home, like if you're writing a song or something and you reach a chorus or something. Yeah, maybe then I would say, yeah, definitely do that. But doing that all the time is not what you want to do. Okay? The idea is building dynamics through rhythm. And rhythm is vital because look at how different it's going to sound, right? If I'm doing versus something like okay, and you see I do these little, right, that kind of thing. I'm gonna get there, okay, but we got to start at the basics. So you see how different it starts to sound when you just change your right hand dynamics a little bit. So let's get into that. The first thing I would say is use a thinner size pick. If you're used to using like a Jazz 3, don't use a Jazz 3. Don't use a very thick pick. Just use a thinner pick. That will help you out a lot. The second thing is starting to get used to drumming with the guitar. That's really the way I think about this, and this is how I explain it usually if I have students and they're like, "How are you strumming like that?" I'm thinking like a drummer. I'm not trying to think like a guitarist. What I'm usually doing, if I have a drummer, the luxury of having a drummer that I'm playing in a band for or whatever, and I'm asked to play acoustic guitar, and it's, most of it's going to be strumming, I'm usually just going to follow whatever the drummer's going to be doing. 99% of the time, that's usually what happens. And the reason for that is because everything that I'm playing are chords, but because I'm playing the rhythm that's very close to what the drummer might be doing rhythmically, there's this interplay, and it fits and meshes in together really, really well. And most drummers I've talked to, they're like, yeah, I love the way you play because we all fit together. And that's ideally what you want to do with music, is fitting together. And rhythm is such a huge part of that. Okay, so we got to start thinking like a drummer. So how do we do that? Well, the first thing I would highly recommend is start listening more to drums. Believe it or not, that helps a lot. And you don't want to be incredibly overwhelmed. You don't want to listen to Neil Peart, or you don't want to listen to Buddy Rich, or all these other superior drummers, Marco Miniman, whatever drummer you really like. Listen to Steve Jordan or something. Listen to a John Mayer song and listen to what the drums are doing. It might just be something as simple as kick, drum, snare, kick, drum, snare. So it'd be kick, snare, kick, snare. It's the most basic kind of beat. So we might as well start there. Okay. In order to kind of create this dynamicism, the way I usually do it and the way I think of it is think of attacking your low strings first as your kick drum. So it'd be the kick, your low kind of tone, right? And then your snare, the higher tone is the higher strings. So it'd be like the low strings are the E, A, D strings, and then the high strings are the G, B, D strings, or G, B, high E strings. So what I would do is mute the strings and then kind of just do a regular basic beat, kick, snare, kick, snare. Every drummer, though, they have to start with the tempo. So tempo is also very important. You always want to be in time the best way you can be. Considering we don't have a metronome, I'm just going to count, okay? So it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. Kick, snare, kick, snare, kick, snare, kick, snare. And you see how I'm kind of bouncing my hand? That's kind of my way to keep time along with it, So if you really notice a drummer, very rarely are they super stiff. They always have some sort of way, whether they're bobbing their head or they're counting in their head or doing something with their body. They're trying to keep time, even if it's just like, pretending to play and they're not really playing. They're just waiting. And what they're doing is just kind of using that motion to keep time and keep what we call in music a pulse, right? So a pulse is very important. So in this instance here, I'm doing 2 downstrokes. I'm doing a downstroke on the kick, which is my low strings, and then a downstroke on the snare, which is my high strings. So one more time, it would look like this. I'm not even playing anything. I'm just muting everything. So you can just, whatever, just put your hand like this and then do 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you might, shake it up a bit and do something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you notice I'm not really thinking about, hopefully you notice this. I'm usually very much not thinking about whether I'm doing downstrokes, upstrokes, or anything. What you start to do is just think of keeping a pulse almost with your low strings and then emphasizing with the high strings. And what that builds is, if you notice, 1, 2, you see how I'm doing like 16th notes? One, two, three, four, five. Well, it's actually eighth notes. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. So I'm doing eighth notes there. And another thing, I have to really emphasize this as well. If you do have a strong commitment to wanting to learn guitar and wanting to really get into it, music theory does help a lot, because I'm talking about eighth notes. What are eighth notes? For every beat, right, there are 8 notes. that's ideally what it is. So it'd be actually for every 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Yeah. So for every measure, I'm sorry, there are 8 notes. I can't even talk. For every bar, there's 8 notes. So if we divide up a bar as 1, 2, 3, 4 beats, so that means every 4 beats, that's every 4 ticks of a metronome, that would be a measure. And so you could think of it as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Time is very important in every aspect of life, but especially in music. Okay, without time, you're dead. Ideally, that's kind of the way we separate. Excuse the old expression, but the men from the boys. It really applies here, because it really shows you if you're a novice or if you're a pro. Because a pro can make even the most basic chord sound like you never heard it before, just by doing different little things. So get used to that. Get used to the right hand, mute the strings, and then do that one. So do 1, 2, 3, 4. kick, snare, kick, snare, kick, 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 snare, kick, 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 snare. That one's also a good one. Or you can break it up a little bit and do kick, 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 snare, kick, 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 snare. You know, so it'd sound like this if I played a chord. And the reason I'm emphasizing all of this is because that's where we get into this idea of almost like adding little fills into what we play. So in this song, right, if I play it, let me look for it. So he does this little, and that's really right hand rhythm. There's no other way to put it. Right? Right? So he's just muting the strings and then kind of doing that. So it's just like thinking like a drummer. That's really what we do. And doesn't seem the guy in the video. The guy in the video does not seem at all like he is really trying hard to do that right hand rhythm. It just comes. So what that is just a right hand kind of. And all of that will come from doing, believe it or not, okay? It's going to take some practice. So what I would do in that case is put on a metronome. And if you want to do something like what this guy is doing on the guitar, is put on the metronome and just kind of start feeling the pulse. Feeling the pulse is super important. That's what gives us life. So it does the same for music as well. Like for dancing, everything is about timing. So, you know, so if it's a 1, 2, 3, 4, right? It's all it really is. I'm sorry if it seems really flashy or whatever of what I'm doing, but I'm demonstrating that a lot of this applies, you know? So don't feel overwhelmed and don't feel like it's going to take forever to do it, because it is going to take a while to build it, right? But really the best way I would practice this is just muting the strings, listen to drummers and kind of follow along. Try to follow along with what this guy's doing with his right hand, right? So if I were to do that, let's just try and do that. Right? And another thing to note, very last thing I'm going to talk about, I'm sorry this video is so long, but the very last thing I am going to talk about is that the right hand is always moving, okay? It's always going up and down, whether you hit the strings or not, okay? It's always going down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, or however you want to think it, up, down, whatever. But it's always moving, okay? So that's super important. really vital to just be able to just keep moving the hand and then just strike the strings only when you really, really want to. A great example of this is Can't Stop by Red Hot Chili Peppers, which I forgot how to play. Which, it's been a while, okay? So you get the idea, right? You're attacking the strings, but you're really just moving that hand, and it's only attacking only when you choose to, okay? The hand is continually moving, but you attack only when you choose to. This is a very important thing, and a fact of life with acoustic guitar is that rhythm is going to be your greatest ally, because it's going to separate you from any other vanilla guitarists out there. I'm telling you. I've had that experience, whether it's just playing at church or playing with friends or playing wherever. People will notice, and especially other drummers and other guitarists, they notice and they'll be like, yeah, this guy knows what he's doing, you know. Even if you know exactly when to create dynamics, like it's knowing when to slow down, when not necessarily slow down, but when to quiet down and when to kind of build it up and build it down, and then when to go crazy. Okay? Just be patient. You'll be fine. All right. Hopefully this kind of gave you an introduction into what I'm getting at. The best advice, just listen to drummers and then try to follow along with different beats using your left hand, just muting the guitar, and using your right hand especially to build into that. If you want to get into it pretty severely, start listening to funk guitar. Very rhythmic based, and it's going to teach you a lot in a short amount of time. All right? Have a good one.